Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 528, NFL Championship Reactions. Hello, Big Chillians, and welcome back to the Big Chill Podcast. I'm Frank, joins us with Eddie. Eddie, how's it going? Are you awake and ready here? It's a late night for you watching those championship games.
Yeah, the second game wrapped up at around, I guess, 4:30 here. But no, and it looked
AM.
Yeah, and it
let's make sure people know that.
And it looked for all the world as if it was headed to. I was preparing myself for, potentially another 30 minutes or an hour. By the time all the formalities associated with overtime and stuff, you could lock yourself in for a while. So I was getting ready for at least a bit longer, and then I was actually.
And we could have recorded right after. That would have been perfect. We could have been hot
instant
off the press.
Reaction. But I was actually looking forward to the prospect of overtime. I sometimes you just kind of want it to happen, but as a fundamentally as a neutral. But yeah.
Did you also kind of want overtime to happen to see if that new rule would get caught up in the game?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big.
For those who don't know, which is actually, I don't know. Did they explain the overtime rules before? No, because normally they do like right before it's going, but I guess they realized it might not go. But yeah, Eddie and I have always made the joke that they love to explain the overtime rule. That's been exactly the same for like 13 years. But this would have been the first opportunity they really could have given you the new playoff overtime, where if a team scores a touchdown, it's not over. The other team can score a touchdown, aka the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills.
Yeah,
rule.
Basically the Bills rule. And that's the downside to overtime is you're guaranteed no matter what happens that some people are going to complain that it's somehow unfair on one of the teams involved, that it's a disadvantage now to get the ball first. There'll be all sorts of, no matter what, there's no perfect world, and so there's always going to be people complaining that they've somehow been kind of screwed over by whatever the overtime rules are.
Yeah, so I think we'll just do a little quick recap of the games for anyone who maybe didn't see them, which I kind of strange if you're listening to this and didn't watch the games, but maybe you were with Eddie and it was a little too late for that second game. But then I also have a bunch of kind of like hot takes, overreactions that can really encompass both the games pretty well. And I'll read them and then Eddie and I can kind of give our opinion on them. But I mean, first game, Niners, Eagles. I mean, I think as soon as Purdy got hurt, I think it got pretty tough for the Niners, and then as soon as then their now fourth string quarterback goes out with a concussion, it became impossible.
Yeah, I think it was over as soon as Purdy got hurt. And what you really saw for all the doubters, the kind of Purdy, I'm not fully on. I don't think Purdy is guaranteed to be the next Tom Brady. There's extremes on this spectrum, but for all the doubters who thought that Purdy was it's such a great system and he has incredible weapons around him, pretty much any quarterback could step into this Niners team and be efficient. You got to see what a real backup looked like when Josh Johnson came in, because he looked uncomfortable. He never looked good. Even on completions, he just didn't look as if he was really in control of the situation. There was a marked difference between him and Purdy. But yeah, as soon as that Purdy injury happened, basically two plays, I don't think we even have to talk about that game in any real detail. Two games decided the outcome. One was the decision not to challenge.
Two plays decided the outcome.
Two plays, yeah. The decision not to challenge the catch on the fourth down.
On Devonta Smith.
Yeah. And then the Purdy injury, which when you then see the full kind of replay of the Purdy, the forced fumble, that where Purdy injures his elbow, he has Brandon Ayuk wide open. So if that play isn't made, it's a touchdown. So, you kind of have that huge swing in terms of potential outcomes. But the only thing that bothers me about that game, I'm sure you're going to poke at it a little bit more over the rest of the podcast. Once Purdy went out, I kind of just accepted that it was game over. You can't be critical really of anyone involved from the Niners perspective. Although I think Shanahan threw in the towel basically in the second half. But the decision not to challenge, when you see a wide receiver make an absolutely spectacular catch and immediately is calling for his team to hurry to the line and snap the ball, just challenge it. In the first quarter,
Yeah.
just challenge it. Worst case scenario, you've wasted a first half timeout, which is pretty much meaningless, and you've wasted one of your two challenges, which the situations in which you could challenge two things in a game are so rare. Like, just challenge it. It was such a huge,
Yeah.
especially because it was on fourth down. If that had been like first down, you maybe argue, well, they're putting a drive together anyway, so who cares? But the fact that you were about to get the ball nearly on midfield in great, versus you were putting the Eagles in a position where they're basically guaranteed to score a touchdown, you have to throw the challenge flag there.
Yeah. And the other thing about that is people say they don't want to waste the timeout, but they're rushing to the line and their defense really wasn't set anyway. So you run the risk that even if you waste a timeout in a challenge, that if you don't call timeout right now, they might just score on this next play because your defense has no idea what's going on. So at the very least, it's really not even that bad to just stop the play in general and make sure that now that they've gotten this first down, that they don't just run a play on you and you're not prepared for it and then they score. So I
Yeah.
don't think I get timeouts can be pretty crucial in playoff games and things like that.
Not in
But
the
at the end of
first
the day,
half.
like I think, yeah, I agree with you. Not in the first half, not as much as in the second half. And I think just to the point, you need to. And the other thing I always think is anytime I see a receiver make a one-handed catch as they're going to the ground, I think you almost always challenge it because the way that they look at these rules, like they can still have possession of it, but like if they roll onto it with one hand, you can't have like both underneath things supporting it. So there's a good chance that maybe the ground has some influence on it. So like it was weird to me that they did not challenge that. I get it's early, but still, I mean, early plays can have crucial impacts because we
I
believe in momentum. So
No, I disagree with you. The fact that it's early, it's completely the reverse to me. Late in the game, you'd think more about it because you would think, okay, I lose a timeout, and this might be the timeout. Then timeouts increase exponentially in value as the game goes on. The timeout in the first quarter, it's in the first half, they're pretty much meaningless. I mean,
yeah, no, I'm not. That's not what what
no,
I'm
but you're
saying is like I
saying
think
because it was early, you should like you're saying. My point is, as it gets later in the game, you put more thought into whether or not you challenge it.
yes, I'm saying most people. I'm saying most people say like it's that early in the game. Like, don't bother challenging it because there's so much game left to be played. Like, one play is not going to change a game in the first quarter. But I think like it could. That like just you shouldn't take that into account just because it's early in the game that it might not have a meaningful impact on the outcome.
The fact that it's early means that you have even more incentive to challenge something, because in a sense you have far less to lose. That if that happens at the beginning of the fourth quarter, you do need to start thinking to yourself of, well, if I'm wrong, then I've lost a timeout. That's not great. But even if I'm right, that timeout might be more valuable than the outcome of winning this challenge. Like, you have to start to, there's so many more factors that you then have to throw in depending on, what the score and the situation in the game is. But in the first half, I just wouldn't even think about my timeouts. I'd be interested to see what the statistic is on, what percentage of teams finish the first half with a timeout or more unused. And I would guess
Well,
it's the
Sirianni makes sure he uses his.
yeah, but even with him desperately trying to use them, even then the Eagles still usually finish with one. So they're I don't know, and I get it. Shanahan said afterwards that the replays, and it's true, it took a while for the replay that clearly showed that the ball moves as he rolls over. It wasn't one of the first sort of handful of replays. So for the ones that were shown in the stadium, there was nothing that clearly. I don't.
And even the announcers watching it, the first two replays they saw, they both thought it was a catch from those replays.
Yeah, although announcers sometimes are idiots, but 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 yeah, to me, it's just the instant reaction of the receiver in particular. Like, if I were a receiver at times, I think it would be worth faking that. Like, try and get a team to burn challenge and a timeout by pretending you may not have caught it when you are confident that you did. But yeah, I think you have to throw it. I'm also then question, Shanahan's excuse. Well, the first few replays in the stadium, there are guys who that's their job, is to really quickly look through those replays and advise him as to whether or not he's challenged. I'd question what those guys were doing. And, going back to your point, maybe you call the timeout anyway, just to give yourself a chance to set your defense up properly. He could have called the timeout, and then he can throw the challenge flag during that timeout. So he could call the timeout just for sort of tactical purposes, basically, and then give himself and his team time to see more replays. And then when he decides, oh, hey, actually, after 15 more seconds of seeing replays, it looks like this is worth challenging, I'll throw my challenge flag. Now, if we win the challenge, I get my timeout back. So, like,
Yeah.
it's just really poor from a guy who's supposed to be such a, guru. And Shanahan's had a fantastic season, but that was a mishandling of the situation.
Yeah. And I think more importantly, that then costs them the game, because has he challenged that, then that Brock Purdy play never happens. And that's the reason they lost that game.
Yeah.
That non-challenge is the reason they lost that game. 100% on Shanahan.
And that they didn't win the Super Bowl this year.
There you go. That's it. A one bad non-challenge. I'm sure we're going to get into officiating. But this was one that sometimes I don't understand how they don't see things, officials. That fumble by Purdy when he gets hurt. I mean, when I saw it on my phone, sitting on a hockey bench, like 20 feet away, holding like the phone on, like sitting on the side of the bench. And like, it's clear that ball's out and he punches it. I mean, the fact that they completely missed that. And at the end of the day, I guess it doesn't hurt the Eagles because they scored that touchdown anyway. But the fact that they miss it and the Eagles get the ball there as opposed to picking it up and continuing to run, just the fact, like, those are the calls I don't get how they don't see sometimes.
I don't think that would have impacted. I don't think the fact. I mean, because the Eagles players didn't react like it was a fumble. I mean, I give them credit; they reacted more like it was a fumble than any of the Niners players did. But fundamentally, like when the interception itself wasn't caught, they all reacted as if it was. So I don't think.
Well, the one guy picks it up and starts running.
It's how many yards do you think he's going to get? 4 more?
Touchdown.
No, come on, give me a break. I mean, that was inconsequential. But nothing. I mean, the criticism you'd have to say is more towards the Niners players who made absolutely no effort to pick the ball up. I don't think they would have got there anyway because
they heard Purdy screaming. I think exact words were, "Oh shit, my career's done."
The Eagles players were best positioned to pick it up anyway, but certainly. I think you can give the officials. I think there was poor officiating in both games. I think they swung the outcome of the second game. The first game was just such a mismatch once Purdy was gone that I still think the officiating was not good. And I think it was 90% in the Eagles' favor. And
torn UCL, out 6 months is the report coming out this morning.
Well, it depends on. So if he has Tommy John surgery, which is a realistic possibility, you could be looking at a full year for Brock Purdy. So,
but at least 6 months is with a torn UCL.
The most frustrated people by all of this. I mean, I think everyone from the Niners' offensive perspective has to be frustrated because it just made their jobs pointless. But the Niners' defense, even though the Eagles ended up scoring 31 points, played well. And
they held them to under 300 yards.
Yeah, and
they were absolutely exhausted.
Had the game situation been different, I don't think the Eagles score 31 points if Purdy is healthy the whole game. If you see what I mean, then the Niners offense has the ball for longer periods of time. It puts more, the field position shifts in terms of when the Eagles are getting the ball, and also it puts a little bit more pressure on the Eagles. They basically in the second half had nothing to worry about. The only thing they had to worry about was not getting injured and probably not giving away any plays that they might want to save for the Super Bowl. Those are the only two things they had to worry about.
Yeah, the Eagles had possession for 38 of the 60 minutes. So obviously you're looking at a pretty exhausted defense, one, but also two, as you're saying, they're just getting more opportunities to score because the Niners offense is pretty much just punting every series. I'll tell you what, this is a best case loss scenario for you because you can go into the offseason thinking The Niners are still the best team. I'm still gonna have to hear you. If the Eagles win the Super Bowl, you're gonna at least once drop the best team in the NFC didn't even win the Super Bowl.
No, no, I won't say that. But honestly, I mean, I think overall, all around, the Niners remain the best team in the NFL.
No, I'm not gonna say that. You literally just fucking said it 10 seconds
But
after.
I'm not going to say when or if the Eagles win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to claim that like the best team in the NFC. I think the disappointing thing from my perspective is I then watched that second game, and had the Niners won that first game and been healthy, there's no Purdy injury, there's none of that, and then I'd seen what I saw in that second game, I would have been
Here we go.
I would have just been looking forward to that defense just shutting down either of the teams that they were about to go up against in the Super Bowl.
But not the defense that took out 2 quarterbacks.
Well, I mean, we'll get on. I mean, we're not going to use this episode for a Super Bowl preview, right? We'll that might be hinting at what my thoughts are as to what I think could happen in the Chiefs-Eagles game.
And then we get onto the second game, which, was a closer game, but still I don't think was of the caliber that I was expecting a Bengals-Chiefs AFC championship to be. At times it was a little flat, and at times it picked up. Like there were certain drives where something would happen, like that T. Higgins touchdown. You saw that and you're like, oh, here we go. Now it's kicking up a notch. And then it would like die down a little. And then, a good, like, it just wasn't consistently great football. It was very choppy. And I think part of the reason it was choppy was the refs were kind of just fucking that game up in the sense of just like random stoppages and taking 20 seconds to like make a penalty. Every penalty was like a discussion because they couldn't hear each other. So it was just very choppy of a game. But I'm going to say Mahomes was pretty amazing in the fact that I still don't know if I believe now that he has a high ankle sprain. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't
how
believe
good
it.
he looked. Like,
I don't believe
get it.
If there's the Michael Jordan flu game conspiracy theories, the Mahomes, the only thing
is there the high ankle sprain Mahomes conspiracy theory?
The only thing that's going to save him having the same level of like 20 years of enduring conspiracy theories is the fact that this was the AFC Championship game and not the Super Bowl. Like if that's the Super Bowl and he plays like that after 2 weeks of people discussing how he should be out for weeks, there's no way he's going to even be able to run, and then he just occasionally limped. There was the odd play where at the end of it he kind of looked a little, walked a little gingerly, but 90% of the game he looked pretty much fine, aside from the fact that he didn't scramble as much as he normally would.
There's one play where he rolls out to the left and makes a throw, and he like ends up hopping and hobbling after that play. And I think Romo was like, like, Jim, here we go. Like, looks like he might be hurt. This could affect the rest of the game. And the next play, it's like the same play, and he's not hobbling at all. He's like completely fine.
No, it was, there's a good chance. I mean, it's definitely not a high ankle sprain. He obviously probably has some kind of ankle injury, but I think the severity was overblown. And look, if you're the Chiefs, it's probably the smart move. It probably impacted how the Bengals prepared for that game and certainly what their early game plan was. And they had to make mid-game adjustments in terms of how they were going to, what they expected to see from the Chiefs offense. But yeah, I mean, he was, I don't know what percentage you'd say he was at, 80 to 90% of his normal self there. And fundamentally, that 80 to 90% only impacts a handful of plays. And you could notice it a little bit, but the fact that he was also says he had no injections, there were like no painkillers at all involved in him playing in that game, there's just no way that the injury was as severe as was first made out. But I will agree with you. It's a game that benefits from being close. We've discussed this on a number of occasions, and it's one of my big gripes of people going, what an incredible game. It was a reasonably well-played game, had a handful of very good plays. I would say almost all coming from the Bengals, like the touchdown to Higgins, the fourth down conversion when they had the balls to go deep, when I think the majority of teams would have tried to pick up the handful of yards that they needed. There were some standout plays there, but most of it just was, if that was a regular season I don't know, Bears versus Lions game, you would have said, hey, a couple spectacular catches, but you didn't miss anything special if you didn't happen to tune in for that one.
Yeah, no, I think it just gets the benefit of the doubt because it was on the back end of one of the more boring championship games of recent memory. Maybe I've ever seen. Just the fact that like when that Niners game went to half and the Eagles had 21, I honestly knew there was no chance the Niners were going to be able to score 21 points with what they had unless they did something drastic, and they decided not to. And in fact, they went the opposite way and put Purdy in to when you knew he couldn't throw the ball. And the one time he threw the ball looked like a person who had never picked up a football before tried to throw it.
But he threw
so
it
at that point, I don't know why they did that. He threw
it
twice.
he threw it a couple times, yeah.
Twice.
But no, he could. I mean, he couldn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage, basically. And look, I think there's going to be a lot of people who've never played football who are going to oversimplify what's involved in like sticking a wide receiver in at quarterback. And I do think they should have just stuck. They should have just run the Wildcat or done something a little bit more creative to try. Like they were never going to win by just running the ball up the gut over and over again because the clock was their biggest enemy. Like even if you can freeze the Eagles offense and say, okay, we're going to get a 3 and out from the Eagles every time they get the ball from now on, you're just going to run out of time. By they were trying to string together like 8-minute drives when they needed to score 3+ touchdowns. So it was a little bit as if they would have almost been better immediately punting the ball and saying our best chance of scoring is forcing a turnover and either scoring directly from a turnover or at least giving ourselves such a short field that we have a chance to score quickly. Like I would have, if they had just decided from then on, we've got the ball on our own 30, punt, let's try and get the Eagles on their own 20 and let's see what we can do. That would have made more, you would have increased your chances of winning more than by deciding to just run the ball, hoping to pick up like 4 or 5 yards at a time. And especially in a situation where the Eagles then knew every play is going to be a run play. I mean,
I don't know why I even covered the receivers at that point.
I mean, it's one thing to, you can have the most creative run, calling in the world. But once the defense realizes it's definitely a run, we can just stack the box. We know there's going to be no play fake here. There's no threat of anything other than someone kind of taking a handoff and running the ball forwards. You're screwed.
And I mean, for me, so I had a pretty ambitious, I think like 7 or 8 play in game part, like a 1-game parlay, and one of them was Brock Purdy to throw an interception. And in that second half, I was just like, throw the ball, because the first throw he had was like a wide receiver screen. It was like a 7-yard throw, and it looked like, honestly, it took 4 seconds to get to McCaffrey, and I was like, oh my god, if he just makes one more throw, it's gonna be picked. Like he can't physically throw the ball. And the rest of the game, we were watching it at the bar, just like screaming at the TV to just throw it every play. I was that annoying French guy watching the game.
Yeah. And instead, look, his realistic, not factoring in his stats when he went out, but he finished 4 for 4 basically.
With a 7 QBR. A 7?
No, he finishes with a 7. But at the time he went out hurt, his QBR was 96 or something like that. So
yeah, I know.
his healthy performance was good. I mean, I think it would have been. It's just a shame whether not from a Niners. But honestly, it didn't disappoint me at all because I just accepted the fate. Like it's not even. There's nothing. If you're disappointed about that, it's just an unfortunate set of circumstances, right? But I think whether you're a Niners fan, even if you're an Eagles fan, I think a little bit anticlimactic. Like you want to win, you want to feel as if like getting to the Super Bowl is good, but they won the Super Bowl 5 years ago, so it's not as if they're trying to end some massive drought. But you would have wanted to feel as if like I'm sure the Eagles they felt going into it that they were the better team. I'm sure they would have rather. Not the players, I'm sure the players too, but like as a fan, I would have rather beaten a healthy Niners and said like, well, we're definitively the best team in the NFC.
Not Eagles fans.
Maybe not.
They're as shady as they get.
But as a neutral, everyone was denied what could have been a really entertaining game, and instead it was like watching preseason game.
Let's get to some of the hot topics and some of the controversies that's been kind of being talked about post these games. So we'll go back to we'll do the Chiefs Bengals a little bit more. NFL's rigged.
I mean, I don't believe it.
So
Obviously,
this is obviously in reference to the officiating and some questionable calls in the Chiefs. Now I almost said Niners. Chiefs Bengals games. One being that third down play where the ref supposedly blew his whistle, but no one heard, and the play went completely like no one was stopping in the play. It completely went, and the Bengals stopped them. The Chiefs started to bring their punt unit out, and then the refs talked about it and made them redo the third down, which then got the second time, but eventually ended up punting in that drive anyway. But you could argue that momentum there would have been a big thing.
Well, no, I mean, there's a little bit more controversy to it. So it was third down. They're stopped well short. They were going to punt. They then, because the clock was allowed to run on the previous down, which meant that the time was incorrect, you had an official who was running onto the field, but seemingly from the replays does not blow his whistle. But he does run onto the field. But by the time he's anywhere,
waves his hands.
By the time he's
somewhat
anywhere,
frantically,
he's nowhere near to any players or the play. And by the time he gets like significantly onto the field, the play is over. Now, supposedly, what kind of compounded that frustration from a Bengals perspective is they don't then get the first down because there's a sack on the play immediately following, and they call holding on someone in the secondary on like a corner or whatever, whoever it was. So the only reason they get a first down immediately after that is because the refs then throw a flag. So it's the kind of the combination of the two. You've given them the like fifth down, and then you've also thrown a flag, which you have to say to yourself, it was holding. The flag that again gave the Chiefs first down is correct, but you'd almost think to yourself, if you were the officiating crew, you would have gathered yourselves together after having this controversial fifth down take place, and you would have said to yourselves, guys, if we are going to throw a defensive penalty on this one, it better be the most egregious, like, example of an offense that we've ever seen, because we cannot be giving them the additional down at a 20, when the game is 20 all in the fourth quarter, and then also give them a whole set of downs afterwards. Like, I think, and you want officials to treat each play.
This is what's great to me is you get angry that officials aren't good, but then you want them in game to change the way they make calls based on a previous outcomes.
I think we'd be naive if we thought that they didn't. I think in every sport,
well, they shouldn't.
Yes and no. I don't know. Part of me wants to think if an official thinks they made a mistake, I actually not that bothered by the idea of evening things up. Like it doesn't bother me that if like, I don't want them to I don't want sort of ghost. I don't want so all of a sudden, well, no one even touched the wide receiver and you're throwing a defensive pass interference flag. I'm not going that far, but like if you think, oh, maybe on that last drive, that was a little bit iffy. That was a little soft. And I threw the flag there. I think there's nothing wrong with an official then telling themselves, if I see a similar example going back the other way, I'll throw a flag as well. Because if I've made the mistake the one way, I'm willing to make the same mistake the other way. At least it's consistency, which ultimately I think the only thing that people ever want from officials is consistency. You can be consistent.
Yeah, I agree. Consistency, but I think there's a difference between consistency and making up for bad calls with either further or non-calls.
I'm not implying that they are like, I'm going to do my best here to find like the ability to throw a flag. But I think in those circumstances where you have just given the Chiefs an extra play, I don't think there's anything wrong with the head official saying, right, guys, we made a mess of that one. Let's let them play on this one. If we really have to do it, but let's let them play. This is because I think the argument is, which I think for most people that would have bothered them particularly in that fourth quarter of that Chiefs Bengals game, didn't feel like they let the Bengals play. Does feel like they let the Chiefs play. And That's really the issue. I don't think it's rigged. The NFL isn't rigged. Now we've obviously we've had guests on in the past to discuss the NBA previously having corrupt referees. If in the future you told me that one of those these are not fully professional officials, right? Like these are guys who get paid to officiate NFL games and have full-time jobs and lives outside of that. They're not paid enough to have that be the only thing that they do. So you're opening yourselves up to the possibility that, yeah, there is a guy who maybe needs a little bit extra money and someone comes to them and says, hey, for $200,000, do you think you can just throw some soft flags on the Bengals?
Man, he bites on the first hot take. Look at him. Just changes his tune 5 minutes into.
I'm not saying the NFL is rigged. I'm saying there's a possibility that an official, I don't think that game was rigged, but I'm saying to think it's impossible that an official at any moment in time has tried to influence the outcome of a game. I think that's naive.
I will say the comments I've been reading on like Twitter and other outlets that I think were pro Bengals, they aren't, I guess, griping about the the late hit out of bounds. I think most people agree that that was a penalty. It's unfortunate that a game gets decided because of a penalty. I don't think anyone wants that. But I think that was the right call in that situation. That any angle you look at that, it's a delayed hit out. It's a hit out of bounds. Like it's gonna be called.
Here's my issue with it. Very similar play happened not long before to Joe Mixon for the Bengals, and no flag. And I think the argument from the officials would have been, look, it wasn't a big hit. He just got pushed a couple steps into being out of bounds. That's all that happened to Mahomes. Mahomes sold it really well. He went tumbling. He managed to roll into the bench. Now, I also give the Bengals Joseph Osai credit. He managed to try and save himself.
Fake his own injury.
Fake an injury as his knee had just exploded. I don't know if that helped him. I almost feel like that made the impact look more severe. Like I think he would have been better served. The flag had already been thrown, but I think he would have been better served like popping up and just acting as if that was nothing. But I think the fact is, those don't always get called. It's technically by the book. It's the right decision. But you could look back through this NFL season and probably find 50 examples of players getting hit much harder, one or two steps out of bounds and nothing happening. And people saying, well, it's so the game's so fast and he didn't know, like the reason why it's so dumb is Mahomes is obviously going out of bounds. Like it's not one of, sometimes you feel sorry for the defender because they're in a situation where like, well, yeah, he stepped out, but he could have been stepping the other way. And then I get made to look like a fool as Mahomes picks up an extra 9 yards and they get the easy field goal either way. There it was like Mahomes is going out of bounds. He has to stop the clock. He has nowhere to go. He's not picking up the first down no matter what. That's what makes it so stupid.
Yeah, and it's a shame too because it would have been interesting to see what they would have done because they still had 8 seconds, so you figure they have time for one more play. Would they have been able to get enough on that play to still get into field goal range?
They would have needed an additional 15 yards to feel like 10, 15 yards to feel like it becomes a makeable. They basically needed, because if you then look at how that field now, and Tony Romo pointed it out during the game itself, it's a little simplistic because he tries to kick it further if he needs to kick it further, obviously. He didn't make it with a lot of room to spare in terms of distance. Yeah. So he needed...
And it would have been a 60-yarder.
Yeah. he needed to be like 48 and in probably to really be able to do that in those conditions. But it's just a disappointing way for that game to end with... It was, I guess at the same time, we would have been in a situation where then people would have been talking about it as an instant classic had it gone to overtime, and neither of us.
So we avoided that.
Yeah,
we got the NFL is rigged, but we at least avoided the instant classic. So the next one on that, Eddie, is I think a case could be made for when to overlook analytics. And I'm a big fan of analytics. And the Chief drive before that, they had the ball third, or is it 4th and 8 on the Bengals 37-yard line with 2:30 left. Now, we just said that would have been too far for the field goal because they said Bucker's range for that day with like the temperatures and stuff was probably like 50 and under. So it would have been a little far for the field goal, but they obviously could have gone for it on 4th and 8 on Cincy's 37, but instead decided to punt. The surrender index, which is like how wimpy of a punt is, at that time was like the 99.999% surrender index, and it was rated the number one wimpiest punt in the NFL this year. So analytics would tell you that was the wimpiest not like thing you could do, but yet it seemingly works out for them because they do something that no one in the NFL does anymore, and directional punt that thing out of bounds at the 8-yard line, and then you force the Bengals to try and do a drive with 2:30 left on their own 8, which works because they punt and they get the ball back and end up winning the game. So is this a case for not to follow analytics, or is this just an anomaly that happened to work?
No, I think they were right to punt, and not just because of what the outcome was, but I don't think there was nothing from how their offense was working in the second half. There was nothing to indicate that they were going to pick up 8 yards. I mean, they were struggling to put drives together, and so you have to read, like, you have to factor in how well or how effectively are we moving the ball, and if they had gone for it and failed to convert, it's pretty much game over, because then you're giving the ball to the Bengals on, let's say they pick up the best possible outcome for how they fail there. They pick up 7 yards. And so then, the Bengals are in a situation where they need 30 yards to attempt a field goal to feel as if, and with all the time in the world to get those 30 yards, and also knowing that even if they have a 3 and out, they're going to be able to punt and pin the Chiefs back themselves. So they kind of get to play not risk-free football, but definitely a very different type of drive to the one they then had to try and construct when they got the ball back. And yeah, we often can criticize teams for no longer employing the directional punt. The Chiefs actually did it multiple times in that game.
Multiple times.
And it shows
It's like they tapped into something that no one else knew existed.
No. And turns out it's smarter.
Yeah, it turns out it fucking works.
Rather than hoping someone on your special teams can make a spectacular play to like claw the ball back as it bounces into the end zone, if you have a punter who says, I can guarantee this ball is going to go out between the 3-yard line and the 8-yard line, you should probably do that.
And we saw, actually, there was a few punts this championship, both games, where the punter just decided to drill it as hard as he can right down the middle and over punted his coverage, and the guy was getting like 15, 20 yards of return. Like, the fact that they don't directional punt is crazy to me. So the other one I have for the AFC, Eddie, is, are the Buffalo Bills the biggest loser of this AFC championship game? Because it seems like now you have a massive rivalry forming between the Bengals and the Chiefs, and seemingly the Bills have kind of just floated away from this picture, where at the beginning of the year we were saying that they were the best team in the NFL and possible Super Bowl champs, and now it seems everyone in the AFC is all hyped up on this Burrow Mahomes thing.
Yes and no. I think there's a lot of recency bias in terms of how dismissive the people are being of the Bills. Like, I think the Bills are a little bit behind in terms of all-round play. Certainly the Chiefs. Possibly the Bengals. But, that was a game played in really weird conditions. And for example, we spoke all postseason about the Bengals' offensive line and how that could be an issue for them. It wasn't an issue for them at all in the Bills game, because they just managed to kind of establish dominance and get their run game going. And I actually think Tony Romo did a pretty good job of it, kind of explaining that in the game by speaking about how, well, it's really different. Run blocking is kind of an offensive form of blocking. It puts you on the front foot. Whereas pass blocking, you are in your very nature being forced backwards. And so if you aren't a cohesive unit and if everything isn't working smoothly, that's far more likely to go wrong. And in the Bills game, because they just got off to such a hot start, they were able to sort of be on the front foot for the remainder of the game. I'm I think this could be a blessing in disguise for the Bills because maybe they need to not believe their own hype to a degree. And this is a good way for them to approach next season with a little bit of that underdog mentality and reassess, kind of take an honest assessment of where they have shortcomings, where they need to strengthen, what they can do better. And maybe for Josh Allen and the Bills as a kind of whole organization and team, that could be really beneficial to them in the long run because they might have gone to a situation where everyone was sort of anointing them the best team in the NFL, even though they'd never even made a Super Bowl, let alone win one. And this might be the reminder of, okay, we didn't even make it to the AFC Championship game this year. We lost to the team that didn't even make the Super Bowl. And there's two other teams that we have to get by, one of whom will have won at least one Super Bowl, but possibly two. And the other one lost in a Super Bowl the year before too. So we are behind in the pecking order and we need to change maybe how we're thinking about ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think, I think from the NFL standpoint too, I think already you're going to see a push that the AFC Championship, is the rubber match next year between the Bengals and the Chiefs. It's already kind of playing in the cards for like a picture perfect AFC Championship, and the Bills are nowhere in that picture.
And the Burrow versus Mahomes rivalry.
Yeah,
and sometimes people,
and it's unfair. And that's like the same thing. Like Allen is right there with them.
Yes, and it's only 12 months ago that you had the incredible Bills Chiefs game.
Yeah,
and then everyone would have said, wow, it's a Allen versus Mahomes rivalry. And so I do think it can be an overreaction from everyone to just think, wow, this is the Bengals and the Chiefs are just going to dominate the AFC for the next 15 years.
Yeah. So the next one is a little, I guess, pregame, postgame. This obviously was triggering in the trash talking department, this AFC Championship with all the Burrowhead and all the we own the Chiefs. Burrow, for those who didn't see, had a sweatshirt on for his outfit that he wore to the stadium, said sorry in advance. That was like the logo or the brand or something like that. So it was just never stopping. And I think it finally was too much. I think there's a point where you can use it to your own advantage to hype yourself up, but then there's a point where you're really going to start to piss off that other team. And it was clear. I mean, post game, Kelsey was just off his rocker that game, like post game. So what triggers you a little more, that Burrow gets kind of a dose of reality here, or that Kelsey kind of goes off and tells the mayor to shut your damn mouth, you jabroni?
Yeah, and it wasn't just him, right? You had also
no, it wasn't. He just happens to be the one who's in front of the mic the most.
Frank Clark also had, they can take their bum ass all the way back to Cincinnati. They came to the Chiefs Kingdom and their ass thumped. I'm the fucking king.
Oh. See the ass thumping king?
I guess so. Where's Sam? But look, I think I don't think there's the narrative that, wow, the Chiefs were extra motivated. Like, this is the AFC Championship game. They, I don't think there was any, I don't think they were on the sideline like at 2020 being like, we better fucking win this game or else those guys won't shut up. Now, they might be saying that because it's just what else, people say dumb things, but I don't think as if had they been best of friends, then the Chiefs would have been on the sideline saying, guys, this is a close game, but whoever wins this deserves it. Let's, this will be a tough pill for to swallow, but those guys over on the other sidelines, those are good guys. So if they win, we got to be happy for them anyway. The Bengals went overboard. And like we discussed on the last podcast, it just turns them from the sort of lovable underdogs into being sort of easy to despise. I also think people have maybe overstated slightly it was an isolated number of Bengals players who were the loudest when it came to the whole Burrowhead and stuff, particularly Eli Apple.
Oh, that's it. I don't, we can maybe get to that later, but did you see the Eli Apple fallout
Yeah,
after that game where his mother deleted her Twitter account 5 minutes after the game ended?
but it's being treated as if the entire Bengals, like every player was talking about this, and it was a select few. I think even Joe Burrow was the sweatshirt thing is annoying, but for the most part, Joe Burrow doesn't say that much, right? It's just his pre-game outfits and his post-game cigar smoking, but it's not like he's calling other players out. And if anything, he's super complimentary whenever he talks about the Chiefs and Mahomes. So I do think people kind of tried to spin that into being maybe a little bit more than it was. I'm post game. The Chiefs need to cool it. They won a game 23-20 with a last second field goal that required a penalty to put them into field goal range. And you would have thought, by the way, I mean, not even the ass thumping quote, the way Kelsey was calling people out and crowing about, how it's not Burrowhead and all that stuff. You barely beat them. And to be honest, the Bengals were the better team for probably 3/4 of that game. Like the Chiefs had a very good start, and it looked like they were going to maybe run away with things. And then the Bengals found their feet, and certainly in the second half were the better team. And when it got to 20-all, I thought the Bengals were going to win. Like there was every indication that they were sort of on top at that moment in time. So as much as the Bengals should have, and we both said pregame the Bengals needed to cool it, and it was too much, the Chiefs now need to cool it too. Because winning 23-20 at home and then acting as if you just won in the manner in which the Eagles had done, it's like relax, especially when you're a team whose your core components have already won a Super Bowl. Like,
Yeah.
act like you've been there before. Maybe make the comment of, hey, I guess it's not Burrowhead, and maybe that will shut them up a little bit and move on.
Yeah.
Like, don't make it.
Maybe tell the mayor to shut up. You didn't have to call him a jabroni. That
The,
was just uncalled
yeah,
for.
the mayor bit, yeah, the mayor bit I at least thought was kind of amusing just because what he did was
Yeah.
so dorky and stupid. And I at
Yeah.
least give him credit that the mayor then came out and admitted jokingly admitted he should have sort of stuck to his lane. But all the other stuff, like the ass thumping comments, that's a 23.
Hey, he's the king of ass thumping, Eddie. He's gonna tell you. He's gonna tell you how it is.
If 23-20 is an ass thumping, then
In fairness, though, I think both of us made the comment, although it gets slightly reversed because Burrow had a nice pass to T. Higgins on that touchdown. But you take away that T. Higgins touchdown, and Burrow didn't have a particularly great game. He had 2 picks and was sacked 5 or 6 times. So it was not a Burrowhead performance by his standards.
no. But I think with both players, you can isolate sequences where Burrow, aside from the interception in the second quarter, he had something like 150 yards in the second quarter alone, which dragged them back into the game. Like that was, you have to give him credit there. The kind of the moments when that game could have slipped away from the Bengals, he did step up. He made some key throws, and I mean, this is the problem always with professional sport or the NFL, right? If one or two things go the other way, it changes a decent performance into a terrible one or a decent performance into an extraordinary one. Like the fourth down conversion or the Higgins touchdown. If either receiver just drops the ball on challenging catches, then the analysis of Burrow's performance is radically different. And but and the same with Mahomes. Mahomes wasn't impressive for the majority of that game. He didn't have the interceptions. He didn't have the one bizarre fumble, which just looked as if he sort of short circuited
That was just weird
in the middle of a play.
Even the way he was on one foot too. It's really, he was on one foot on the wrong foot
It's the
trying
kind
to
of
throw
thing,
it. It was just really weird.
if you were playing Madden and that happened to you,
it's like a glitch.
people would be like throwing their controllers at the screen and telling EA how it's unrealistic. Now, I'm not saying that EA should start incorporating that into the gameplay, but it was just bizarre. Like it was so weird how it unfolded. But yeah, I mean, Mahomes wasn't. The Chiefs started really well, and I did comment to the people I was.
Almost the same thing happened from like the last championship
Yeah,
where it was all Chiefs first half and then the Bengals adjusted.
I did make the comment to the people I was with in the bar that when they were so dominant on those first couple of drives and they were only 6 points up at the end of it, it was like you might regret because you're probably not going to be that dominant for 4 quarters. So to be have a period of time when you are that much on top in any sport, you have to kind of drive home that dominance and you have to be scoring points. And that
Yeah.
was the thing. It just felt like, well,
We,
the Bengals are still in this because all it takes is a touchdown and they're winning.
yeah. We've talked about this for years now, it feels like, with the Chiefs, that if there's one, I think it's even worse than their defense sometimes being potentially a top 5 worst defense. It's the fact that they get a lot of these red zone opportunities and don't capitalize on them. And then, like you're exactly right, in big games like this, every point matters. And you know, if at that point they're up 21-3 going in that second quarter, that's almost a game over scenario where they can just start to almost run out the clock at that point. But they're up 13-3. You know, it's a whole different game. 13-3 is nothing.
Yeah, no, and they're lucky. I mean, the Bengals then stalled in the red zone themselves. So there was the opportunity for the Bengals to actually they got themselves in a position to take the lead after that, and then they also kind of made a hash of their clock management at the end of the first half. Ironically, after talking about how first half timeouts don't really matter all that much, to me it wasn't even their timeout usage was poor because they did it to save a handful of seconds at a time when they didn't need to do it. But just in general, they kind of to have to kick a field goal on third down at the end of the first half because you needed maybe 2 or 3 seconds more to be able to allow yourself to run a play. That was just poor clock management.
Yeah. And then I'll kind of use this one to transition back into the other game, but it applies for both. So last year we saw both number 1 seeds not advance to the Super Bowl. And this year in the NFL in the regular season, we saw that there was really not much of a statistical advantage of being the home team. But here we see both 1 seeds, both home teams win. Do you think home field advantage played any role in those wins?
Probably.
Refereeing aside of not being able to blow your whistle and run out and stop a third down play call.
Yeah, I mean, look, you could say that officials might be influenced by home crowds, so that might have played a part in the fact that it feels as if both home teams got the benefit of the doubt on the officiating, and maybe that's a slight home field advantage, which I think officials would always deny, but it seems impossible to me to not be influenced by the reaction of a crowd. Like to hear tens of thousands of people scream for a flag to be thrown, and to not have that sometimes just make you twitch a little bit of like, oh, maybe it was, did I miss something? Oh, I better throw it. Like that has to happen from time to time, no matter how good you are. So there's that element. In both games, you also saw some instances of the road team struggling to communicate with the noise. I think in particular that really had an influence on the Niners with Josh Johnson, just because when you're then throwing in another quarterback who's not as comfortable with everything, and then he's struggling to communicate, like you're just compounding, it's an exponential impact on how difficult it is for you to run your offense. But I don't know.
I think Arrowhead was pretty freaking loud. I think it definitely helped them a little bit on defense.
Yeah, like I'm sure there's the whole advantage of how you get to prepare and sleep in your own bed and all that stuff and not travel and little things that just make it that little bit easier to be at your very best.
It helped Frank Clark.
Yeah, he was ass thumping the night before in his own bed, and he got to ass thump that same night in his own bed too. And that's why they call him the
king,
the Kansas City King of ass thumping,
the KCK of ass thumping.
I can see him 10 years from now on a mattress commercial, just talking like a local TV station, just talking about like, I'm Frank Clark. You might know me better as the Kansas City ass thumping king, and I'm here to endorse, Joe Schmo's mattresses, the softest mattresses in the county.
So going back then to the Eagles Niners, are the Eagles still overrated? And I say this with the fact that in the regular season, they had a very easy schedule and very easy opponents where you still didn't know going into the playoffs, is this actually as good of a team as they look on paper? They then go into the playoffs and they face a Giants team, which you can say what you want about the Giants improving, and I think they improved greatly, but they are not of a caliber team to have been anywhere near sniffing a Super Bowl. And then you end up playing a Niners team that by the first quarter is on to either a quarterback with no arm or potentially Christian McCaffrey at quarterback. So, do we still really know if they're a Super Bowl capable team?
No, and we won't know for 2 weeks because yeah, it's difficult. Their playoff wins, whilst they've both been convincing, they don't. It's games you would expect the top half of the NFL to win, so it doesn't really add anything to their sort of best team in the NFL candidacy or resume.
I mean, they're
I
averaging 34 points in the postseason right now, and I still don't know if that offense is good. I
no,
mean,
and it
that's crazy to say that, right?
yeah, and it didn't look that good against the Niners. Like it really did feel, and I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who are upset by it and think that it's a Niners bias or whatever. In my case, obviously not in yours, but it felt like had that been a close game, the Niners had everything they needed defensively to try and get stops to slow down that offense. They weren't going to hold them to 14 points, but to not, it wasn't going to. It's not like the Eagles could just move the ball at will. And yeah, this is going to be the test because this Chiefs defense isn't anything spectacular. Maybe from a pass rush perspective, they'll be able to get some pressure, but then that kind of plays into the Eagles' hands at times. So it's going to be a case of like if they beat the Chiefs, and even then, people will probably say if Mahomes can milk this injury for another couple of weeks, even then people will be like, okay, so you beat like a okay Giants team, you beat the fourth string slash fifth string Niners quarterback, and then you beat hobbled Patrick Mahomes. Like, what a spectacular Super Bowl run that is!
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't still fully buy it.
But they're 2 points favorites for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
And they've let up. And what's crazy, like, here's what's crazy. They're averaging 30 points, 34 points a game in the postseason scoring, and they're averaging 7 points allowed. That is an insane statistic on both ends. For one team is crazy. But again, I don't know how much I buy that their defense is that spectacular. I know all season they put up all these stats, but they put up against these stats against a lot of inferior teams. And again, like, oh my God, you held Josh Johnson to whatever, how many yards? Who cares? The
yeah,
Giants could have done that.
oh yeah. Oh no, I think any playoff team, any of the teams that made the playoffs would have beaten the Niners yesterday once Purdy was out. Like every single one of them, because they would have. It was a race at that point. Even if you'd been 7-0 down, it would have been a race to 21. And once we get to 21, this game's over. Like there is no way they were going to score multiple touchdowns. So then I think at that moment in time, every single team would have been favorites. As for, I mean, look, it's the weird thing, right? If they go out and beat the Chiefs by, let's say they by 21 points, then as much as you can doubt their season and this playoff run in the future without all of that context, it will look like arguably the most dominant playoff
Yeah.
performances of all time. You're like, oh my God, they beat the Cowboys. They're beating teams. They beat every team by 3 scores or more or whatever. Like they would. You'll have people 20 years from now saying, were the 2022-23 Eagles one of the best teams in the history of the NFL? But we'll see. I mean, that's the nice thing, I guess. It gets to be put to the test, and it gets to be put to the test against the team that probably feels right. Ultimately, I think these are probably the two best teams over the course of the season. These were probably the two best teams in the NFL. So the Super Bowl matchup feels right. And then on top of it, if you want to try and prove your legitimacy as being a really good team, then beating the Chiefs feels like the right team to have to beat because you got a lot of experience in the key areas there. They've previously won a Super Bowl. They've been a dominant team in the NFL within the recent past. So this feels like the right team for them to test themselves against.
Yeah, and when they go back in the history books, if the Eagles were to win, I mean, going into the Super Bowl, the Chiefs have a 10-point differential. The Eagles have a 55-point differential going into the Super Bowl. And if they were to beat the Chiefs by like 10, say, then in 3 games they will have had a 65-point differential, which is insane to think about in 3 playoff games. So we'll have to wait and see for that.
I know an incident that got you really worked up this weekend was
God,
LeBron James and the no call at the end of the Celtics Lakers game. For those who, if you're not if it would have been hard to have missed if you're in the US because it's been covered as if this was the game 7 of the NBA finals. But if you're
because of the reaction of the 6-year-old involved.
If you're not, it was a tied game. LeBron James has what looks like a fairly easy layup to effectively win the game, given the time situation, and is certainly fouled.
Allegedly.
He's definitely fouled.
He's fouled for sure.
There's no call, and he then proceeds to lose his mind, jump to the floor, slap the floor. Patrick Beverly, his teammate, gets a camera from one of the it's kind of an amusing little bit of like trolling. Like I got to give him points for creativity, but it's such an insane reaction. Took the camera onto the court to show one of the officials to like show the still frames of clearly contact. The thing that bothers me the most about it, I know that you're bothered because of just the overall reaction. It's a regular season game in January. If that had been a playoff game, like if the Lakers are eliminated from the playoffs because of that, I can get the reaction. But
they go back and change the result.
But I don't understand why he's so worked up in a game at the end of January. I don't get why all of his teammates are, and I don't get why even if you want to give him, I'll defend him before you because I know you dislike it more. His reaction in the moment's one thing, but he then went on like he's had Twitter rants. His teammates have had Twitter rants.
Yeah,
you got people criticizing the refs, how they've got to be fined for their mistakes. Talking about officiating in the NFL. Now with NBA players losing it over it. It just seems like such an overreaction to a game at the end of the season. I know the Lakers are fighting for their playoff spot, but probably at the end of the regular season, this game will be meaningless to both teams.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that overreaction is an indication of how far LeBron has kind of dropped, where now he's on a team, like you just said, that it's fighting for playoff spots. I mean, you rewind 10 years ago, he's probably on a team that is already in the playoffs at this point in the year and are starting to rest to get ready for the playoffs. And now he's on a team where he hasn't won in a significant amount of time, and he hasn't done big things in a very long time. And, this should be pointless, but where he's kind of dropping right now, like this is meaningful to him at this time, because even like a game winner, when was the last time LeBron had like a game winner like that?
I don't know. He's having a pretty spectacular season. So
he's having a good season this season. He's having a good season this year.
It's not a good season. It is a all-time great historical season. So we do have to, because we're going to get NBA. Neither of us are real NBA guys. Like I watch it a fair amount, but I'm not in the weeds in the NBA. But we're going to have people listening who are going to lose their minds if you're like, he's having arguably one of his best seasons of all time, given the context of the situation.
But and then the tantrum itself is just insane. If an 8-year-old did that in an AAU game, I would say that kid has issues and his parents need to teach him how to act
That is
and be sportsmanship.
That is,
and then
I
mean, he literally flails to the ground on all fours and is like beating the ground.
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you?
It's an interesting point, because if my child behaved like that, I would be.
You'd rip him off the court and you'd never let him play again. And then he wouldn't be your son the next day.
But hey, he did take to Twitter and he did say, "That one hurt big time. I don't understand." That was his tweet.
Speaking of big, how many times did Tony Romo say, "There's a big play here, Jim"?
Yeah.
Like, every play is a big play. Enough, Tony.
Tony Romo, for a guy who burst onto the scene and kind of changed the way NFL games were being called and was a breath of fresh air in those first couple of seasons, I think there are fewer examples of commentators, announcers, whatever word you want to use for them, becoming slightly, well, definitely more annoying and sort of less interesting as in such a short space of time. Like a couple of years ago, I loved when Tony Romo was calling a game. He added something to it. You're getting great insights. And now it's like he's a caricature of himself. And it is just him saying, "I don't know about that, Jim. Oh, a big play coming up here." It's like, yeah, we get it. It's the fourth quarter in a tied game. Like I think we all know it's a big play. Like that's you excitedly saying it and then laughing, and then, I mean, most of it's like having a child kind of commentate on a game. He's just like really happy. The anticipation for the upcoming plays is huge. And then when there's a big play, like when there's a good play, he's just really happy to have witnessed a good play. But he doesn't criticize teams, which I think that's where I get frustrated with NFL announcers. If their analysis of the game won't involve saying someone did something wrong or that something was bad. And Tony Romo clearly just doesn't want to, he wants to be everyone's friend, I'm assuming. And so he'll compliment people and talk about how great something was, but he never really says, no. He never goes, "Well, that was a huge mistake from Patrick, by Patrick Mahomes," or whatever. It's just like, "Oh, yeah, oh boy, that happened. Uh-oh." And then move on.
"That's a big play, Jim."
Yeah. And also from the weekend, I guess it's the worst thing, Novak Djokovic, his procession through the Australian Open wrapped up on Sunday when he beat Stefanos Tsitsipas in straight sets. Probably now on his way to securing his legacy as the greatest tennis player of all time. I mean, he is undoubtedly, barring something extraordinary happening, going to retire with the most Grand Slam wins. And so this three-way neck-and-neck race that we'd had for a while between him, Federer, and Nadal.
A menage a trois, you might call it.
Yeah, you might. Federer's out of the way, obviously, having retired. Nadal is so affected by injuries. I think the best case scenario for Nadal is one more run at Roland Garros in May and a French Open win, and then maybe call it quits there and go out in the best way possible. But Djokovic should be able to, there's every indication, be able to maintain this form for a couple of more years. And then you'd have to set the over-under on Grand Slam. If he plays for 3 more seasons, the over-under on Grand Slam wins for him is 3.5. And I think everyone would take the over. He might, because he might get 2 more this year alone, as we discussed on the last episode. He might even get 3, although, but yeah, it's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, it's super impressive. And like you said, I mean, without anyone really stepping up to kind of start replacing some of these legends, he could just run through it for the next few years. I mean, you saw what might be his number one younger competitor, and he just bulldozed through him in the finals.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And I think the thing that Djokovic is now developing, Nadal's had it on clay for almost his whole career, but that sense of being almost unbeatable. And Djokovic is approaching that sort of status on grass and hard court, which is, you know, I'm not saying that's harder to do, but those are obviously, certainly in the hard court seasons, much longer than the clay court season. And you have, you know, there's a handful of clay court specialists who really get to the top of the game. So it's a harder thing to achieve. And I just think there's a mental obstacle to beating Djokovic now that's really tough to overcome.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I guess with that, I mean, we can wrap it up for this podcast, and then we have ample time in our next one to discuss The Last of Us, episode 3, a very
talking about ass thumping.
Different. Wow. Oh boy. The views of some, not of all. Yeah. This, let's put it this way: this wasn't in the video game.
No.
For those who haven't seen the episode, no spoilers. We'll give you some more time to watch.
It was a side mission that Sam desperately craved.
Jesus.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next
right.
episode.
Well, I guess
next episode will be a focus.
Yeah. Now that we've ripped into Sam a little more, I guess we'll talk to you later.
See ya.
See ya.